which I'm getting ready to start doing.
It's 3 o'clock
Yeah, I'm gonna.
p.m. Tuesday, September 8th, 2022.
Is it really cold?
Call to order. This is the Oconee County Council joint meeting, Oconee Joint Regional Sewer Authority. Moment of silence, please. Mr. Root?
Yes, sir. Pray with me if you'd like to. Well, Father, it is a lovely day, a wonderful day to be alive in this beautiful county. Thank you for that. Thank you for the many opportunities you give us, the opportunities you give us to work together. And I pray that that spirit of harmony would preside over this meeting, and as we go about our business, that these two entities would find ways to work together for the betterment of the citizens of this county, by your wisdom and by your will. I pray in your name. Amen.
Mayor Ramey, will you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's see, discussion items. I'm gonna turn it over to Mr. Chip Bentley.
Thank you, Mr. Elliott. Before I get started, I want to let Chris make a real quick announcement.
Appreciate that, Chip. So, Ms. Brock's aware of this. I'm aware of it, and I think that we're probably the only two in the room. Well, Mr. Bentley, go.
No.
Okay, so we got approval today that we received the go-ahead to advertise Sewer South for bidding. So hopefully that in the next couple of days, I'll speak with the engineer and we'll begin getting that out there and get that advertisement out to begin receiving bids in the very near future. So I thought everybody'd be happy about that. So
Glenn was out there with his pickaxe, that's why he was a little late to the meeting.
Appreciate you helping us get off to a good start, Chris. Afternoon, everybody. I'm Chip Bentley. I work with the Council of Governments. I've been involved in sewer and even for the better part of 2+ decades now. So I know a little bit about the history and everything, but today it's really a chance to come together and let you guys talk, kind of organically and build on your own. I'll admit when Chris called me, I don't know, 6 weeks ago now maybe, and said, hey, would you be willing to come facilitate this meeting? It seemed like a little bit of a daunting task given the history I know. But excited to be here and hope that this is really the beginning of a good conversation between the county and the authority and the towns. As we go through this, I don't want to be doing much of the talking today. I don't think that's really going to serve the purpose. It's hopefully going to be an organic one that you guys start. But from the outside looking in, I was, trying to think of how to structure it, and I kind of see kind of two levels of discussion. And the first one is sort of that 10,000 foot level, talking about, okay, for sewer in the county as a whole, where do you start? What is everybody looking to achieve? I think you all each have your individual visions about what you want to see moving forward, how you want to see the county develop or your town develop and everything. How do we make sure that those are, connected and meshed together? So once you kind of have that idea of where you're trying to go, it makes it a lot easier for everybody to seek out solutions and structure that'll achieve those solutions together. And the second part is more that 1,000 foot level, the brick and mortar. How do we get that done? And I know there's a lot of discussion in that already and a lot of different players in that, but how do we start to build those partnerships and get everybody together on the same page and make that work going forward? Both are really important to this discussion. You can't have one without the other. You could say that two can't be successful, that how do you get it done without having a vision for how that's going to work and where you're trying to go? But the same can be said that if you don't have a vision for where you're going, anything you do to kind of create this structure isn't necessarily going to work because it might not be moving in the direction you want it to. So you kind of have to have both pieces. So certainly I don't think y'all are going to solve all these issues today, but hopefully it's the start of a good conversation and a way to kind of look for those bridges to build so you can move forward together and kind of in lockstep. with that being said, I know I don't know everybody at the table, I know a lot of them, but maybe if we could get everybody to go around, I'll start with Chris again, just to introduce themselves real quick.
Chris Eliezer, I'm the Executive Director at the Oconee Joint Regional Sewer Authority.
Tyler Grant, OJRSA board member.
Brian Ramey, Mayor of the City of Westminster, and Chair of the Joint Regional Sewer Authority.
I'm Lee Baker, I'm the Utility Director for the City of Westminster, and I'm on the board.
Brandon Burton, City Administrator, City of Walhalla, board member.
Scott Paris, Utilities Director for City of Walhalla and board member.
Scott McLean, Engineering Supervisor with the City of Seneca, and board member.
Todd Ferris, Director of Utilities for Seneca, and a board member.
Scott Mulder, City of Seneca and OJRSA board member.
Julian Davis, Oconee County Council, District 4, which is the Westminster area, Long Creek, Madison, Richland Retreat.
Good afternoon, Paul Kane, Oconee County Council, District 3, which is the City of Seneca and the area of Utica, as well as Newry.
John Elliott, District 1, County Council, town of Salem, most of Lake Huey, and Lake Jocassee.
Glenn Hart, District 5, the City of Fairplay, and South Union, and Crossroads. Thank you.
David Root, County Attorney.
Amanda Bright, County Administrator.
Thanks, everybody. So I'm not gonna have a lot of questions. I'm gonna try and, hopefully the conversation just kind of takes on a life of its own. With that, but I think what I'd kind of kick off is, you know, there's a long history with the sewer authority, or going back to the sewer commission and how that's gone over time. I think to just kind of open the floor up to whoever wants to comment and give ideas, what I would say is, if you could start from scratch, how would you form sewer moving forward in Oconee County? If you didn't have anything in place right now, except you knew you had that one plant, how would you move it forward from today? And what would you see as the best way to move it forward? Not everybody at once.
No, I'll speak up. So we're not the first county or towns to go through this. And what I see other counties do throughout the country and towns, cities, is hire urban planning firm, come up with a plan, independent body, knowing we all have an interest in different parts of the county. And so I just throw that out. I know it's expensive, but it might be a way of doing this going forward.
So if you hired them, what would they be looking, what would you think they would give you in that process?
I think they'd give us direction on where we want to continue to develop, places we want to preserve, like farmland, and so that we could then determine jointly where we want sewer to go next. So that's kind of my vision there.
And that kind of speaks to why we called this meeting to start with, and I do appreciate the county council being willing to meet with us. We've been trying to do this for some time. Each of the cities has a growth plan, growth management plan. We all look at what we're doing in our cities and, you know, what areas we want to specify as industrial, residential, high-density housing, or whatever. What we don't have at the sewer authority is something from the county giving us some kind of directives. And we're not asking for zoning. We know zoning's a four-letter word. Nobody likes the word zoning. But to manage growth, to have some kind of idea of what the county wants out of us as an authority. We're here to work with the county. We don't want this division. I've watched what's going on with Sewer South, and I've heard that the sewer authority is trying to stonewall it and hold it up. I've heard the county council didn't want it, and, you know, people were trying to slow it down. I don't think any of that's true. I think we just didn't work together. And right now, if you look at what's been in the paper recently with all the new development coming, it's gonna be about as big as this Sewer South project, just the new homes that are coming in. And this board needs some kind of directives from the county. We would love to have something from the council, the county council telling us where you want the growth, what kind of growth you want, what you're gonna support. You know, you supporting industrial growth at Sewer South in the Fairplay area, what are you supporting out here at Clemson? You know, what are you gonna support between Walhalla and Seneca? That'll help us as we move forward, because we're under this consent order, we've got a lot of investment going into that in itself, just to get us back where we need to be. And before we move forward with expanding our system, we need to feel like the county's on board with it and they're behind it. That's what I would love to see. And I think it would work better if we were all working together. If we know what you guys want here, it'll help us determine where we're gonna try to increase capacity and what we can put the money into. Mr. Elliott, is that good?
Good.
Does that
Yes.
cover what you need?
Yes, sir.
From the county standpoint, I'm curious, so I do think the idea of you need to have a vision, everybody needs to be on the same page. I think that's, kind of what this discussion is about, how do we get on that? And I get it from the sewer authority standpoint that, from their standpoint is like, okay, we have to invest to expand the plant to know what the growth is coming is gonna be, at least some expectation of what that's gonna be. Does the county have that idea in their head already about where you want growth to go, where you guys see it? How you think that's gonna be structured? And I know that's a hard question to answer for any community. Any planning firm you bring in is gonna go through that exercise, but at the end of the day, it's gonna be a guess, and it could be turned on its head if somebody located an industry or something else in a place you didn't expect the next day, but do you have a general idea of, like projections of where that might go and where that, where development might go and where it might not go and what scale you think that might be?
If I could interject for a minute. When I moved to Oconee County in 2010, full-time. I chose to live here, being a millennial, I guess, that's what they say I am. And I saw and see so much potential in this community. There are many natural resources here that we have. We have Interstate 85 frontage. We have Clemson University. We're about halfway between Charlotte and Atlanta. We're in the southeast. We have a lot of natural benefits or assets that the county enjoys. I think, when I first got in council in 2014, there was, as I understood, a long-standing priority with Sewer South. Let's get sewer to the interstate, to I-85, because when you look at where industrial development occurs, generally speaking, companies, large manufacturers, generally want to locate around close to an interstate. And that drives, drove the Sewer South idea, I think in large part. And the reason that we want industrial development along with other types of development is because that is, the state has from the Department of Commerce down kind of said that's what we want. Big employers, big taxpayers, they're harder to move if you don't have the same risk of loss of employment it's not like a little entrepreneur shutting down in one city and moving to another or moving across the country. A large manufacturer has its workforce established, so supply chain is used to that area and that workforce, not only in materials, but especially labor. And so you train up the workforce, and your high schools and tech schools are used, and universities are used to feeding talent, human capital into those facilities, so they're more difficult to rip up and move to Mexico or India. And so I think one of the big reasons that's one of the big reasons the state wants more manufacturing. And South Carolina's had huge success in that, and so has Oconee County. So Sewer South was a huge long-term goal for, as I understand it, well before I was born, there was a goal of getting sewer to the interstate. In the past 5 years, we've seen the city of Clemson, driven by Clemson University's growth, push and pressure development onto the Oconee County side of Lake Hartwell and the Seneca River, which was not contemplated, I don't think, for a long time. And so as that growth has occurred, I think we've seen a lot of it. There's more opportunity available there, projects in the works, or basically, from what I understand, shovel-ready, except for the lack of sewer capacity. And so, I think it's important to look at where we have been in the long-standing priorities of this community, and then see some things that weren't really expected, like the growth from Clemson that's driving this demand over to Oconee County. I think personally it makes sense to capitalize on the birds in the hand with the growth that's occurring from, as Clemson pushes their student housing into Oconee County. That investment and those taxpayers are, obviously, we like to see that. Our priorities, of course, in the county want to see safety, and we want to make sure that we have enough revenue to operate the government, and then we also want to maintain quality of life. And I think to me, it's important to establish where we want the growth to occur. As I understand it, and this may not be correct, but I've been told this many times, the reason that Sewer South was installed, that line was installed as a force main, was to prevent or create a barrier to development along the Highway 59 corridor, because if it was a gravity line, it would be very easy for residential developers to hook up to it. And there goes our farmland, which is important to preserve. In my opinion, it's very important to preserve farmland. I don't know that a force main versus, well, actually, no. A force main versus a gravity line is not the best planning mechanism when you're talking about managing growth. Now, as Mayor Ramey mentioned, we're seeing a lot of residential development in areas that nobody ever contemplated happening in the county and in the incorporated areas. So I think identifying the growth is going to occur to the extent that we have sewer availability and to the extent that we allow it to occur from a county and sewer authority standpoint, and the cities, of course. So, I think identifying where we want the growth to occur is important. We need to be on the same page, or mostly on the same page there. And I would encourage us all to think through that. Talking about just outside of the cities probably makes sense to push for development, because it's shorter distance to run the infrastructure. Last mile being the most expensive way to provide any infrastructure. As we know, it's more conservative to have denser development rather than running sewer lines 15 miles to a place that doesn't have any users on the line. The exception, I would say, is I-85 corridor. That's a strategic goal. So around the cities, I think we should encourage development. I don't know if it's a 5-mile radius within a 5-mile radius, or 10-mile radius, or a 1-mile radius. But I also think we need to capitalize on the development. We already have sewer on the Highway 123 corridor. The horse is out of the barn there. We have projects on the line. And I think it makes sense to continue to, allow that development to occur in that area. So that would be what you think about the mountains and the Oakway area. Got beautiful vistas up in the north part of the county and the southern part of the county. I would hate for those to be lost purely from an economic standpoint. I think the economic value in this county, why people want to come here, is in part due to the fact that it's a beautiful place. And if we develop everything, it will become like everywhere else, and we will lose that cachet, or that that value that I was drawn to when I moved up here. So I just think we should identify the areas that we want development to occur and work together toward achieving those goals.
Any of y'all want to share? So I'll relate. So about 10, 15 years ago, REWA in Greenville County was updating their plan. And I was at a meeting, and there's a lot of people there, but specifically folks from the county were there and folks from the sewer authority were there. And it was interesting because as part of that committee discussion, somebody asked the question, well, where is development going to occur? And so somebody looked to the long-range planner at the county at the time, and they essentially said, well, where there is sewer, development's going to go, and we will plan for it accordingly. And so then somebody asked the sewer authority and said, well, where's sewer going to go? Where they allow development and there's demand. And that's kind of the crux of the problem that y'all are bringing up, which is we haven't decided where it's going to go. So for the sewer authority, you don't know what that investment's going to look like, what the mechanisms are that you're trying to put in place. And so, a lot of this is how do we get on the same page so everybody kind of knows where those areas are. Once you kind of begin to define that, I think it becomes a little bit easier to say, okay, this is what we need to do. Bottom line, here's the price tag for it. Here are options to provide it. I know for a long time at different times there's been discussions about, do we always just rely on Conross Creek and Oconee County, or do you look at another location? The reality is, if you have a plan for where sewer needs to go and you know where that's going to go, it's just a math equation. It's not in a lot of ways, it becomes, okay, what is the most efficient, cheapest way for us to do that? If we build a second plant that, contracts here, then maybe you don't have to expand Conross, and the reality is you're getting to a point where that's not an option. You're going to have to look at doing something to Conross. So, time's a little bit of the essence since things move really slowly in sewer to begin to decide some of that, And I think from the authority standpoint, that's kind of where y'all are, is in a certain way is like, we need to know where this is going so we know what our next steps are and how we can achieve that. I'm not sure what the mechanism for y'all to sit down and be able to do that is and kind of work through that. And thoughts about maybe how y'all can sit down together and look at that and where it's going to go, define those areas. I mean, in a lot of ways, that's a county decision, like where you want growth to go. That's what county councils elected to ultimately decide is, what's that look like and everything. But to be able to put that on paper, at least generally, and, all those pressures are real. What's happening along 123, you essentially, in planning parlance, you have an urban services boundary in Oconee County right now. You don't have sewer there, so there's not a lot of growth because they don't get the density they want. And as long as there's no sewer there, you're not going to get that much growth. Once you open it up to that, then you allow it, and it'll be confined to those spaces where you're allowing sewer. So, and that's where that crux of the problem is. They're providing the sewer. You guys are kind of deciding where you want things to go. Right now, it's complete opposite of Greenville County. In Greenville County, things happened everywhere because the sewer authority just they threw another line out there, or somebody's willing to, put the straw into the pipe. Here, nobody's investing in that right now, so it's on hold. And so being able to define that would help you define, okay, here's the areas that are developable, here's the areas we need to protect, much like the farmlands in the southern part of the county when you made it a force main. So I guess one question here is how do you move that forward? How do you guys get together and kind of define that?
It's kind of a two-edged sword from everything from talking to people because, we have one of the lowest unemployments around South Carolina in our workforce. People hang on to our Oconee County workforce. So we may be growing in population, but we're not growing in workforce population. So as you watch Greenville and Easley and Powdersville and everything like that, you see a growth of workforce growing, people moving there to go to work, to locate. You don't necessarily see that as much here. So if, then you hear the other side of it, we need additional manufacturing, we need additional industry, and that's why we're putting, Sewer South in, and that's why we've got OITP, that's why we're looking at grading Highway 59. Well, that workforce has to come from somewhere, so that workforce is, part of them's going to locate here, part of them's going to move here from other areas if other plants are moving parts there. So you're going to get that growth in housing. So, and then you hear the other side of it, well, we don't want this explosive growth in housing. Well, do you want a plant that's going to locate here and have workforce, or do you want them to look for other workforce? Because that's in discussion with a lot of those that have located here, they look at the amount of employment opportunities here, those that have stayed with those employers, some of them, and I think one of the guys about 2 years ago, we were talking, and he said, we've hired people and they stay. We treat them good, they enjoy working here, they enjoy living there, they locate here. And so those that are looking, if you're 250 or 300 manufacturing jobs come here, they're going to bring probably 150 or 200 houses or need that. If you speak to your realtor friends out there, there's not enough houses out there to locate these. So they're going to locate in those outlying areas as well. So that's one thing that we have to remember is if we're trying to grow, to me, you're trying to put those housing units closer to your municipal boundaries and outside of there. And I constantly hear we want to save farmland, and I live on a farm. That's my family's farmland, and out there in Oconee, the majority of it is farming. But we have to keep people interested in farming, and that's a whole nother meeting that we have out here. So you've got a lot of this land that's beginning to start to be developed that hasn't been used in years. Some of it's scab pines, some of it's sewer line property that was down through there. Most of them have to be connected in some way, shape, or form to sewer lines. So it's I don't want to use the word confusing at times when you have people say, well, we need manufacturing, we need new jobs, and then, well, we don't want housing developments. And if you look at the new developments that are in here, half of them are sold before the homes is even done. So the developers are going to build what sells. And I agree that a lot of times developers come in, develop the property, and they run away. So is there a way to make sure that the development stays up, everything looks good, but then you're getting into the controlling sector. The majority of people in Oconee County take care of everything they have. And so having people move here for good jobs, as we've had 2 announcements. We've got a lot of people looking at that. 85's already getting visits up and down there. These housing developments are going to come. And so, the moratorium's kind of been thrown around out there, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, because isn't this what we're trying to do? If not, then we just need to stop running any sewer lines anywhere. If we just want Oconee County to be what it is, let's just stop. But I don't feel like anybody in this room, and really most people in this county, want that to be that way. They want it to continue to grow. They want it to, in a way, to look like the Oconee County, but they want it to have better jobs for their kids. When I graduated Walhalla and then went to Clemson, I didn't plan on staying here. And I'm self-employed and kind of created what I'm at here because the opportunities weren't what I wanted to do. And so I believe that there's better opportunities now for those that are graduating high school with the training that they have, going to tech and everything like that, to go right into the workforce. I believe there's better opportunities for those graduating colleges in Oconee County than there's ever been. So with that, you're going to see these individuals wanting smaller lots, smaller houses, affordable houses. I couldn't imagine paying $250,000 for my first house, but apparently that's affordable now. Still not affordable, and I'm 42 years old, so I'm just thinking out loud. But it's just those things that we have to think about. If we want this area to grow in jobs, it's going to grow in houses. And by that, it's just like what you just said. If you don't have sewer, you're not going to have that growth. So, but it's difficult for me to say, well, we don't run sewer down here because we want to save farmland, which some of this isn't even farming anymore. And that's unfortunate because it needs to continue, and obviously I enjoy eating, but it's, and so does everybody here. But it's those things that we have to think about is, encouraging that. And if we're gonna sit here and say, well, we're not gonna develop that because it's farming, when, I know of 3 properties, 3 subdivisions that have been developed that, I guess if you count a pine tree about the size of my arm as farming, I guess it is. But it hasn't been, I don't eat pine trees. So I'm just saying, it's those things that we gotta think about moving forward.
So from the authority standpoint, not just ask to the members here, for you guys, what kind of guidance would y'all like in terms of where you want to put it? I know the towns are invested in your own growth, but as a board, you have to think about, long-term, how you're dealing with all that. Do you guys have, thoughts on what you would like to see the county to kind of express to you, give you some guidance on where they see things going? So as you make decisions on what to do with the infrastructure, you have a better idea of what you're building towards, instead of just saying, okay, we can't do anything because we're at capacity and we got to start planning for it. Let's just make a guess here and throw something out there. What kind of information, guidance would y'all like from the county on where that's going, so that you have a better idea of the calculations you're making?
I think, okay, we're gonna have sewer in Fairplay. Eventually, we'll have 4 miles of sewer down there. That appears that would probably be industrial. Okay, what kind of industry? What do you want? Oconee County has been extremely lucky in not having any polluters as industry. I think it's very important that the county council still keep that in their mind. These industries that's going to come in, is Tri-County aware of any of that? Do they have any idea of what you're going to be looking for? Are they working towards teaching our Oconee County people to operate these plants? Also, our central pickup station for sewer and Fairplay is pumped to the sewer plant, but all around that, for miles and miles around it, on the east and west side of 59, is gravity fed down to the sewer plant. As you build up on either side of the sewer, of the pickup station, it's gonna be gravity fed in there. Some of it already, but there's hundreds of acres that will start gravitating to that, to build houses. It's going to happen because sewer's there. And it's going to do that all the way up, probably both sides towards the sewer plant. So it's multifaceted in that we've got to look at what kind of industry we want, where, who's gonna operate it, and what do we want to do about that, people? Where are they gonna live? Where are we going to just say, okay, here's 25,000 acres. Anybody that wants to build a road and build a house can build here. Are we gonna have some realistic targets on where people are going to build, how are you gonna build your infrastructure? How are you going, if that came in, how are you going to keep up Highway 59, Pine Grove Road? How are you gonna keep up with all of that? Those roads were not built for the kind of traffic you're talking about having there. All of that's gotta be figured in, and it's not just there's a lot the state's gotta be involved.
So that brings up an interesting point. So the iteration of, what impact does have, every action is going to have, lead to something else. So there's going to be a lot of questions. Like I said, we can't answer all of that today, but it brings up an interesting point. So, and maybe how to get the conversation in this, not today, but in a, going from the sewer authority standpoint, you guys know potentially where the lines are, and you're doing a study now to look at what the potential for sewer and, coming out of there is in the southern part of the county. That would be, that probably informs the county's discussion about where they want growth to go, what can be served and everything, because you have a better idea of what the costs are to serve different areas and things like that. And you have existing growth down there that may or may not, someday want to tie in. Septic tanks don't last forever. So maybe, instead of a new drain field, there's efforts to kind of re-sewer places and take them off of that. I don't, I'm still looking, that's one of the things that y'all can kind of help inform the county on about, here's the reality of the existing infrastructure and what it can take and maybe where it can serve, and then questions that go, that you guys can help answer, inform your discussion. What would help you guys, in terms of like where that's gonna go, and just in general, like parts of the county, Sewer South clearly is gonna open up areas that you guys are looking to address, but then the question about where's it go on the 123 quarter? Is it the whole quarter, just part of the quarter? How does that look? Things like that. What would help you guys moving forward?
Does the county have a land use plan?
Maps on the wall.
You got designated what different types of growth you want where? Okay. That, I think, will help us if we had a plan that, where y'all see the growth going, where y'all want to support the growth. You're supporting it with sewer side. You're investing in it, you're putting it in, you're directing it. We all know exactly what we're doing with sewer side. What we don't know is everywhere else. And like I say, what we're running into now with this consent order, we're having to replace lines. And some of them we need to increase capacity. And we want to know, is this something the county's going to support? Does the county want us to increase capacity here? Does it not? That's what I think we need. As Chris and I talked about it, we talked about it in board meetings. We just don't know what the county wants. And, y'all are the ones responsible. I mean, it's not us. We don't want to be used for zoning purposes. We're gonna stop sewer here so growth don't happen here. We'd rather know from y'all, be proactive and tell us what we need to do. Because we're here to serve your taxpayers. The cities, we know what we're doing in Westminster. Seneca knows what they're doing with their growth. They're gonna put the growth where they need it the best. We are in Westminster, we'll holler it. County taxpayers, that's who y'all represent. And we need to know some kind of idea, a plan, or a design, where you're gonna support it, where you'd like to see it. We don't wanna take the farms away either. But we know you keep building manufacturing plants, you're gonna have to have more workers. We understand. That's just where you wanna put those and what kind of investment you wanna put into it.
Chip,
Yes, sir.
this is my opinion, and my opinion only, but, my priority would be that the Oconee County owns their own sewer. And next would be maybe proposal number 2, that Oconee County join with Anderson County to build a sewer plant. And my last option would be join with the sewer authority. And Mr. Ramey's wanting to know what we plan, or our goal. We're looking to have sewer at every one of the exits on I-85. And we're looking for businesses to be on each one of those, and then we're looking for manufacturing to be in the golden corner. And I won't say that it'll be in my lifetime, but sometime in the near future, there's gonna have to be a sewer plant built in southern Oconee County. Like I say, whether it's in my lifetime or what, I don't know, but
Right.
It'll eventually happen, because Chris himself said that Anderson, I think, has 12 different sewer sites that they treat sewer at in Greenville County. And that's where I think that Oconee County is going to start going there.
Well, and certainly that's part of the discussion. Certainly from the sewer authority standpoint, it's, if we're going to serve the whole county or different parts of the county, what's the most appropriate step forward? Is it piping everything back to Conroe's Creek, or is it looking for alternatives? I think that's part of the study that they're taking on now for the southern part of the county, is like, what are the alternatives there? And certainly, if you're talking about the exit and the interstate, looking to Anderson County, which has several of those exits, and y'all border them, is, potential part of that conversation long-term too. I don't, I think both counties have an interest in the interstate there and probably seeing growth and development. I don't know what Anderson County's plans are, but that's certainly, I think that they were part of some of the discussions for the planning that y'all are doing now for that, or at least, or at a meeting. So from that standpoint, I think that I'm interested. So my hat in sewer in the upstate is the ACOG, is the 2-8 planning agency. So we're designated by DHEC to help with regional planning, sewer planning in the upstate and the different basins. And so from that, there's a plan that kind of sets out who the sewer providers are, the regional providers are. And, that plan is really dedicated to making sure that there's cooperation and efficient cooperation across boundaries. And so we try to ignore the political boundaries. We look at the watershed boundaries as much as possible and try and make sure any investment in infrastructure is going to be as efficient as possible. So, I would say, and what I will say is in the 25 years I've been that person working on that, we have focused more on consolidation of agencies, not expansion of agencies. Now, sometimes when you're moving into essentially new territory, that's what the appropriate agency is, a legitimate discussion. But I certainly, in my experience of seeing that when you can have somebody dedicated to sewer, it's an advantageous, arrangement. If you're looking at Spartanburg County is the best example I have now. You had Spartanburg Sanitary Sewer, which was City of Spartanburg and kind of Spartanburg County out around it. And over the last 20 years, they've gone through and bought up 6 of the town's sewer plants, and they operate those now. And there's 3 towns that still operate their own. And those are the larger ones. And it's become very efficient because you have an agency that's dedicated to sewer, and it makes it really easy. Actually, in Spartanburg County, a conversation I had just last week, one of the towns that still owns their own in Woodruff wants to expand their plant. And the long-term plan says, hey, once you want to expand, we should talk to this other agency in this other county about this common regional plant that maybe y'all could go in on together. Because if you're going to spend funds to expand it and they're ready to do it and there's multiple investments, maybe the timing's right for y'all to come together and do that. And, in talking to him, he used to actually run the sewer plant. Now he's the administrator. And it was funny because I said, listen, it's not personal, but I've said this before, the previous administrator of the same town. It's like, someday he won't be there, someday the elected officials won't be there. You can't guarantee that they're always going to be great stewards. And this is a city, less than a county, but because I have plenty of counties to run them. But when you have a sewer authority or one agency that their sole responsibility is sewer, that's what they do. They usually do it more efficiently than people that do multiple things, right? That brings challenges. It gives away power if you're a county council because you don't have necessarily authority in how that runs. REWA, Spartanburg Sanitary Sewer District, all those have that problem. But long-term, the efficiency of the operation, the efficiency of the investment in it and everything has tended to be better when there's been a regional agency that took control of that. And so, those are always options to look at how you provide sewer in the different basins. But all I would say is when you're figuring that out, take away the political boundaries and say, okay, what's the best solution here in terms of where those plants go, how that feeds out, and then who runs that and what's the most efficient. So, but certainly those, that would definitely be, options to look at as you move forward, and especially the multi-county thought. If Anderson County's thinking about opening that area up to development at all, they're going to need sewer in that location, the same as you guys need sewer for Sewer South to open up that part of the county. So how does that look, and how do you get on the same page with them? It's once you start to build those partnerships, you're like, well, you got to bring these in, then you got to bring these in. The more parties you add, the harder it is to work kind of through the mechanisms and everything. But I think that's hopefully what this conversation starts is if you can identify kind of that common thread of, okay, this is where we want to go, this is where development's going to occur, then it's easier to say, okay, this is what we need and this is how we can achieve it and who's going to be responsible for it. So.
I could just ask a question of the cities. I assume that all cities in the county all municipalities want growth, infill, want growth within their city. You know, you want, I mean, over in Utica, I'd love for some of those burned out houses to be torn down and rebuilt and have a nice place for people to live. That's already got sewer to it, it's already got electric, it's got all the utilities, it's got gas. And I assume most parcels within the cities have, if not a tap, or, well, not a tap, but access to sewer. I assume there are available parcels in every city, and I assume that that is y'all's priority as municipality to provide sewer to the properties within your municipal boundaries. Is that correct? I mean, and then if that's, you know, I would kind of say that's something the cities should probably be focused on with, you know, without county input. Like, that's ideal, because that's not going to create sprawl or put pressure in the unincorporated areas where it's more costly to serve all utilities, all infrastructure. You know, the road infrastructure should be hopefully adequate within the city or close to it to serve that. What about within, do you want development to occur just outside of your current municipal boundaries? Do you want development in, say, a mile radius of your municipal boundaries? Or would you rather it be somewhere else? And I think that's something that is important for us to know too, as we're looking at workforce housing. I think that makes sense, but maybe it doesn't. Maybe it's not what the city residents or the city leadership want. And so I think it's important for us to know too. I mean, we're running sewer to exits 1, 2, maybe 3 one day and 4. Like, that's in the works, at least, you know, 4 one day. And there's going to be development down there. We know that. Do y'all want additional development just outside of your municipal boundaries?
Yeah, I think everybody does. I mean, that's what the cities handle their growth. I mean, we know what we want, and we know where we can do it. The question for your council is, where do you support it? Where do you want to see, like I said earlier, between Walhalla and Seneca, you want to see more industry there? Because those people are paying county taxes. That's the ones who are gonna be paying the money to the county. That's why I want to ask y'all what you want, because we're replacing these sewer lines, and we're gonna have to increase capacity in certain areas. We don't want to go out and replace something like for like, which has been used dozens of times, if you're planning on, you know, more industry or more residential development or high density development coming into that area. That's the kind of things we need to know as we make the decisions we're making. And one thing I wanted to ask Chris is what you need from the council here to help you. I mean, with all the issues we ran into with Sewer South, what can we do differently that will help you?
Put on the spot now.
I'm gonna put you on the spot.
Well, I think that the biggest thing that really is helpful to me is this, and I can't remember if it was Mr. Elliott that mentioned, but somebody mentioned about having a master plan, putting something like that in place. That, to me, is extremely helpful. We've got some idea about what the likely area, I mean, in the way that I've mentioned it a year ago when we sat in this room, is nobody's going to get this right. We're trying to find an organization that's going to get it the least bit wrong when they look at how an area is going to grow, especially like what we have down along the interstate, where it's so far removed from any existing facilities that you're not going to have that creep or sprawl that you may have if you expand a sewer line from a city where it already exists to a mile outside. The study is extremely beneficial to us. It also helps us, from the retail side of things, to identify what the rates need to be, because we can identify and find out how many potential customers we're going to have, how those customers, what they're going to be, whether they're going to be residential customers, non-residential, which could include commercial, industrial. You can strip those down as far as you want as to what types of rates you may be having to have. But I think everybody knows sewer's not cheap. And while to a lot of organizations, even municipalities and counties alike, for what needs to happen, for what you all want to happen from the economic development standpoint, sewer is a means to an end. But for us, for me, sewer is the end. So it's trying to figure out how we serve and are able to do what we need to do to get you guys what you all want. But the biggest thing with us, I think, is the planning aspect of it. And then ultimately it's gonna be the funding, because it's not getting any cheaper to install lines. But, we receive no ad valorem tax and have not even, in years and decades past. So we're completely self-sufficient, which to me may be a good thing. It shows the users what the true cost of the service we provide really is, because we're not having to supplement it. But I think that what needs to be for the existing part of the system where we are now is for that study to continue to the rest of the area where there is potential development. And I would say that could be anywhere before you start climbing any of the mountains around, to where that study would continue. Other than that, I think we would go from there and then move that this is where we don't want to do it. This is where we don't want to put the money in, upsizing lines or running or extending lines too. We've got several treatment plants around the county. I think we're the only, unless you count like the state park or something like that we're the only one that is public where people, we have to provide to wherever wants to connect to us. So, we need to know where those areas may be. Yes, sir.
This basin study that you're doing, are they not projecting some type of growth during this study that they're making?
I haven't gotten the results back on this yet. It's still in the works.
Well, still, regardless.
Yes, sir, they're.
Okay, that's what I was wanting to know. I mean, that will be a projection of the type of growth that they are anticipating.
Yes, sir. So what the way the study works, because I know Mr. Hart's participated in a few of the meetings, the study that what we put out there that we wanted and we have an urban planner that is heavily involved in the study. So the way we wanted it to work was to look at 5-year windows for the next 20 years so that we could begin, every 5 years we see that organic growth happen and how they project it to happen over that 20-year period. So, that's kind of where we are now, is to finding out, because, it may be that we have a treatment plant, we have a plant here and a plant here, we may have a small plant here, which is the Greenville model, from decades past, that you have a little package plant that might serve a subdivision or a small industry or, one localized area. But with the thought of down the road as things do change, and eventually that treatment plant could become a pump station, or that it goes away and ties into a gravity sewer, which is the cheapest way to operate a sewer system, is to use the energy that God has given us with gravity and allowing it to flow downhill. So that's what this study will be looking at. And, it's for a considerable part of the county, but it is in the area that is really entirely unsewered right now, other than that one pump station at Golden Corner Commerce Park. So it's a completely brand new area. So I think it would be a much different challenge to look at where we have sewer somewhat readily available, which is in our existing system and adjacent to it.
it sounds like that's part of the crux of the issues. So you're working on a plan, everybody's working towards sewer south, totally unsewered, and you have to grow that. And then, part of that challenge long-term is when you identify those places that are gonna grow, they're not there now. So what kind of level of investment can you make today? Because if you build, say you need you think in 15 years, you need a 2 million gallon plant. Well, if you put a 2 million gallon plant in a day and you have 100,000 gallons of flow, it's not going to operate correctly, and that's going to be a lot of lost investment. So how do you scale that up? Do you look for interim solutions before you get enough critical flow that you say, okay, I'll be at 40% capacity when we get this finished and we can tie it in immediately, and you put the other pieces into the place so that when you do bring it online, it's there. There's just a lot of things that go into the scenarios when you're talking about unsewered places. So, I guess my thought was sewer south, you guys are all down the road a little bit on, we want it there, we need to look at what needs to go there, how that needs to go, and you're working towards that and everything. Part of the question I think, Mayor brought up is, what about the rest of the county? Where else does it go? We have existing sewer in each of the municipalities. They extend out beyond theirs, but where the county is looking at it, and I think the question Mr. Kane brought up, between, Clemson and Seneca, there's a lot of developable, a lot of opportunity there and a lot of demand. I think one thing that nobody's talked about necessarily is the third party in all this, which is the development community. And they don't really care about political boundaries, and they don't care about any of this discussion. They just care about where they can make their money right now, and they will put stuff where they want to, which is why you get stuff in places that you wouldn't have imagined before, because whatever their business model is says, this will work here even if we're on septic, it's okay. So that's the third part that neither of y'all can necessarily control unless you start saying, okay, we're gonna carve these places out, and then whatever happens in those other areas happens.
Just wanted to touch base. One of the things Tally brought up was talking about, industry and, I call it low impact manufacturing. A lot of them have really worked to, I grew up down the road from the Torrington plant, and it flowed in the creek behind my house, and it doesn't take, if you're from here, you realize some of the dangers that area had. Now, you've got manufacturing and plants, period, having their interior treatment facilities, and their ability to release, they want it, is extremely low. So the impact that I have seen, not just here, but other counties that I've followed, on what they're, creating, and those that have a high impact, where they locate and why they locate in those specific areas. So I don't see that being an issue. The people can actually go home after they worked an 8 or 10 hour day. That wasn't the case for my grandfather. He worked in a textile mill, as a lot of our families did. So, were those that worked around oil or anything like that. So the kind of industry that we're seeing out there is, a lot of clean industry. Some of the sewer that they use, the majority of it is flushing the toilets. A lot of it is. So from that standpoint, we can put a lot of industry on the style lines that we're doing, and based on the last conversation we had on the amount of what the plant can hold, and when it gets above 60%, the timing that it takes to, build a larger plant, to me, that's the most cost beneficial. I mean, there's a big difference in $50 million for a plant versus $18 million to upgrade a plant. And so that's one of the things that I want to touch on. Talking about growth, the creation of cities was basically where you got infrastructures, where your power was, so to me, what Mayor Ramey's talking about is, if we design where growth is going to go, I see a positive and a negative to both sides. It's very common sense to look at that to go, well, student housing is going to be down below the 123 corridor in Clemson. If it's flat, if there's a specific area, that's where they want to be because it's close. I don't think student housing is coming into Westminster. Student housing is not coming into Walhalla. They got to be within that spectrum. So, that's kind of where Mr. Kane brings up, bird in hand That's probably one of the number one calls we get. We need sewer, we need sewer. So if you don't want student housing, don't put sewer down there. So I don't know where, but, you know, pays a lot in taxes, but it causes some issues as well. When I look at where I think families are going to continue to move, I look at the 123 corridor in between Seneca and Westminster. Is a great place. There's a lot of land down there. There's not a lot of farming area. There's manufacturing that occurs down through there. There's areas that used to be farming many years ago that's now just vacant land. When I start thinking about where growth should occur, that's what I think about. And it's not to say that if you have cows on there, we shouldn't grow that area, but to me, those aren't the people that are, you know, like, I don't want housing around me. And the majority of people that live around me feel the same way. They still try to keep some kind of farming going. The 28 corridor that coming down Sheep Farm Road, you run sewer down Sheep Farm Road, hit 28 into Walhalla, it's going to explode. I think everybody in Walhalla knows that's the case. That is a very vital area, very good land, and there's not a extreme amount of farming going on in that area. As in smacking a manufacturing place right down in there. You know, there was a time that they wanted that. Why? Because that's where they got the infrastructure. It seems like they've moved out from there, which is why the Oconee Industrial Park was a huge draw because it's outside. Even though they don't make a lot of noise, they don't have to worry about trucks coming in and out. I mean, if you go back into Westminster when, you know, Beacon and all those were in there, you had trucks driving right smack dab in your front yard. But that was okay because it was just part of life. But to me, people want a quiet part of life. And if your towns are becoming more about entertainment and shops and eating, and as long as they're doing a good job, I think there's not going to be this, I hate to use the word uptown, but as you see in a lot of areas, they build a whole nother uptown. And this is vibrant and the cities are dying. So I think, to me, the investment, you know, I like what the cities are doing. I like where the cities are heading. I see a, you know, heartbeat that continues in there, which is why, you know, a lot of the ARPA funding, not pretty much the majority of the ARPA funding, we invested back into infrastructure, where a lot of counties are doing real shiny things. And you know, we chose to invest back into the cities because we believe, you know, from a development standard, that's where a lot of this is occurring. So when I think about those things, I kind of create a triangle between that and say, because that's where it's already occurring. I mean, if you go in Poplar Springs, there's one pulled right there. I guarantee you, if sewer line was anywhere else in that area, it would continue to grow. But that also comes back to, you know, as a city, you know, it's a struggle if you put 40, 50, 60 houses on the outskirts. You know, they're going to be new houses. They're not going to have, I hear the word impact, okay, with fire. Fire revolves around taxes. That's more taxes that come in there. Safety, you usually don't have an issue with newer subdivisions. You know, it depends on if you've got elder subdivisions, retirement assisted livings. Well, that can be a drain on the hospital, but it also keeps your hospital alive. So it's those things that I've looked at over the years that when I hear the word drain on us, it's, you know, we don't have enough police. I agree with that. I think we've added probably more police in 4 years or 5 years. I guess it's 6 now that I've been on that I've seen in quite some time, and we have plans to continue to keep that up and going. But I also feel like people are more aware of their surroundings. They're doing a better job of, I don't like the word protecting themselves, but they're protecting their belongings. But we're also have more people working than ever before. You want to see crime increase? Let unemployment get to 5-6%. So as long as we keep people trained, and that includes those that don't even go to technical schools, they come, and some of those that don't even graduate high school. As long as we have job opportunities available for them, which we do, it doesn't matter where your IQ is in Oconee County, we have a job for you. And that's great. And we have on-site training. So I think we're headed in the right direction. But when I think about what Mayor Ramey, just to give something back to what that comment was, to me, I think there's a lot of things within the sewer authority that y'all are doing better. I think the conversations are better than they have been. I've enjoyed my conversations with Chris and a lot of your board. It's a difficult situation because there's not any money in it. There's not. Everybody sits around and thinks that there's cash running through there, but unfortunately, if you open it up, I'm afraid it's not. But that to me is when we're talking about growth, growth that keeps the municipalities alive is a great thing, because I've seen those counties that the municipalities have died and your unemployment goes up. We got to have places to go and things to do. And we've got places to eat out in Oakway and they're full. But today in Westminster eating, they're full too. It was in Seneca, Walla, they're full. That's good. That's exactly what we're trying to do. So I think when you're talking about those specific areas at 28 and 123, Seneca, Westminster, to me is where it's going to go. Seneca, Clemson, the price is high because they can get it with student housing. Again, you put sewer down there, I think Mr. Kane is absolutely correct. It's not going to be housing. It's going to be massive student housing. I'm not against student housing because it's great for taxes, but we also need to make sure that it's not a absolute drain on that specific area.
Is it limited to just student housing? I'm just curious. Of the projects that have been put out there. Yeah, okay.
Well, the question I would have, if that's where you see the growth, is the county willing to invest in any of that? If you invest in Sewer South, we know the industry's coming, we know housing's gonna come. Where do you expect that housing to be? If it's gonna be between the three cities, we're gonna have to increase capacity. Is that something that Chris needs to get with the county council about and determine where the growth is gonna be, where you think it's gonna be, or where we need to increase capacity? Do we need to look at building another sewer plant down the road? That's why we need to be working together. That's what we're trying to do, is be proactive in this. We need to know what y'all are gonna support and what's coming so that we can do this right one time instead of coming back and having to redo things over and over. That's what's gonna cost us too much money.
Mr. Mayor, I think that a real life situation we're dealing with right now is, say, Seneca Creek. Seneca Creek is a lift station that we're studying for a replacement of. And the question that we have in front of us is, do we pay for an upgraded capacity on that lift station so that we can encourage and allow for additional growth in that section of the county, or do we not? Unfortunately, this board's being run by municipal representatives that don't see any direct benefit. There is indirect benefit from growth in the county because they're going to come into our towns and shop. We get that. But there is no direct taxpayer benefit for us to make a decision to invest in Seneca Creek. That's for you guys. That's what your jurisdiction lies. So the question is, do you want us to even upgrade the Seneca Creek pump station to allow for growth and development on the eastern portion of the county? We're not. I think that's just a real life situation, and that's the discussion we've been having amongst ourselves, but unfortunately, we're not the ones that should answer that question. And I think that's part of why we're here is, that's an immediate real life situation, but we're looking more long term. If that triangle is definitively where this body would like to see growth, then that's the guidance and direction I think we're asking for. So that we know when we prepare for that infrastructure investment and plan for our capital improvement plans, we know to guide it there, and then we can partner and look for money, and you guys can help invest in it as well. Part of the discussion we've had and some of the concerns some of the board members brought up is, do our existing ratepayers who live inside the city limits or right outside of, are they the ones responsible for paying to extend infrastructure into an area of the county for growth that will take 30 years, 40 years to show a payback? Is that our responsibility? Part of the difficulty is this body was created as a treatment body. We were supposed to be a treatment organization, to treat this waste. I don't think we were designed to be an economic development growth engine for expansion of infrastructure into the county. If you guys say you want to keep all the growth driven to infill areas by creating a urban planning district, a certain distance outside of the cities, and that's where we want the growth to go, great. That kind of happens organically with our infrastructure outside the city limits. Is that the only place you want to see it? Great. Then we don't need to expand capacity in the rural parts. So I throw that one question out there as a real life example of what we're struggling and wrestling with is, do we pay that extra $5 million to upgrade Seneca Creek so that development can occur in the eastern part of the county? And what is that development? Do you want more student housing? We know that's what's gonna come. You're gonna have student housing blow up. Is that what you want? And I think that's the question we're trying to get at, is what do you want? Do you want that housing to blow up over there, or do you not? Do you want growth corridors, or no? Do you have a map showing this is where you want to guide growth in that triangle for residential? I don't know, do you? Do you want commercial growth down the corridor? Do you want industrial in this area? We know we want it in the southern end. We invested $9.6 million and continue to do so. I think that's all we're asking for is, how do you want us to make our decisions as we plan for our capital needs? We're wrestling with a lot just with our existing infrastructure, and then we're also wrestling with upgrade needs. We don't know where that needs to occur. And I think that's, simply put, what we're looking for.
Have you opened your door to the developers that are, I've had two that tell me they had $2 million that they wanted to buy in with y'all and help y'all. Have you talked with those people?
4 million, actually.
Okay, well, that should give you a clue to where you need to improve that Seneca Creek plant. If you got somebody that's got $4 million that wants to donate it, I would say that was a pretty good clue that you're looking for growth down there.
But that's what the developer wants, because he knows he's gonna make more than that $4 million back. The question I have for you is that what you want? You represent that area. Do you want student housing out there? Do you want the developers to be able to pay $4 million to put in what they want to put in? Or do you want to help guide that? That's the question for you. Not the developer, not us. And that's the question we're asking.
And that goes back to the example I gave of Greenville County earlier, which is in a vacuum, the developers were deciding where it would go based on what return they could get on the business model they had, not on what the community wanted, not on what the county council thought, not on what the sewer authority thought was the best idea. It was essentially, if the developers thought they could make enough money, that's where development was going. And if you spend much time in Greenville County, Woodruff Road as a prime example, what you'll see is that didn't serve anybody well, except whoever was making the money off the initial development. And after the fact, everybody was left to deal with it. So now Greenville County is looking at putting in a $120 million parallel to Woodruff Road that, guess what, won't make traffic on Woodruff Road any better. So those are the kind of questions, that I think we're trying to get to. How do we get to that discussion and kind of get down to the brass tacks of where do you want it to go and where don't you? Because then you can begin to balance that equation.
And you're not going to be able to answer that question here today.
Right.
I know that.
Yes,
I can
correct,
answer.
yes.
Well, as a group, you're not going to be able to answer that question today. And I don't think any of us unrealistically think that that's going to happen.
Yeah.
What we're asking for is to start that conversation, discussion, and dialogue of planning together on how that's going to work and what it's going to look like for your portion of the county that you have jurisdiction over. That's all.
Well, I know I'm in the minority here, I think, but I don't think we have the road infrastructure going down to Clemson to support what is being proposed. And for that reason, I'm against it. Maybe I'm in the minority, but I think our road infrastructure doesn't allow it. You see what's going on Tiger Boulevard, downtown Clemson, that monstrosity that they're trying to open up to the students. Can you imagine, once those students get there, what it's going to be like on Tiger Boulevard? It's going to be another 10 Chick-fil-A's.
But part of the benefit I think we have is we're not yet behind the curve, right? I think we have an opportunity to get ahead of that. And if you guys come up with that plan, let's say you do want to allow for a moderate amount of growth over there in a particular area, we can get ahead of the curve, work with DOT, and try to make those transportation decisions before it gets too far gone. If the growth, if you don't even want it there, then we don't have to worry about it. But if you do, we have an opportunity now to prepare and get the right people at the table to make the decisions, to implement the improvements that need to be implemented so you don't have that problem. That's all. We just need some guidance on what you guys are looking for in the county, because, I think we're all, a little frustrated with arguing back and forth on where we're gonna invest it, what are we gonna upgrade, what are we not? And really, it's not even our decision, and I might be a minority on this group, with those comments, but kinda tough.
And if I could as well, I'll disagree with John on this. I think that student housing, generally speaking, is a great asset to our community in that they're a great taxpayer, number one. They don't have nearly the impact on law enforcement and public safety has been alleged. But with mass transit and potentially greenway or alternate routing of these students, I mean, you see them on campus, they're actually doing a lot of that changes, making the changes now to provide for electric scooters or bicycles and stuff. The way we usually think of transportation, we have got to begin to think differently about it in order to, because building more bridges over Lake Hartwell, if we widen that to 3 lanes both ways, I don't know that it's really going to help the congestion that much. And so, and it's going to cost tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars. So I do think we have to, sometimes we have natural advantages that we have to play to our natural strengths. And to me, I think student housing makes sense. And who's to say that it always has to be student housing? One day, it may just be multifamily. Maybe kids in 20 years are all going to school online and they just have a football team there. I don't know. But I think that we shouldn't rule things out, considering the benefits we have right now. We have an opportunity, as you all know, with several developments that would be great taxpayers, and it would be a net positive in terms of tax revenue to the county. I don't know what impact that will have on the sewer authority or the retail cities serving that, but I do think we need to consider these things. I did also want to mention, so I was looking at our comprehensive plan that was adopted in 2020. Our land use element speaks to a lot of the questions that are being asked today, and I would encourage everyone after this meeting to go and look, just Google Oconee SC comprehensive plan, and it'll pop up. And it's chapter 11, land use elements, 15 pages, but there is a current land use map that's in there, and then there's a future land use map that has been, this comprehensive plan was approved by council in 2020, I believe, and this is our 10-year comprehensive plan, and it depicts a lot of what we're talking about in terms of the suburban transitional between the 3 cities, and it shows trying to preserve the farmland, shows the development along I-85, as well as I would call it the Clemson corridor, as the Clemson development pushes into Oconee County. And that's, this is what, the citizens of this county that chose to participate in this and had ample opportunity to do so. And what the consultants in pulling this plan together, and that was approved by the Planning Commission, approved and adopted by County Council. This is our document that we're supposed to be, governing by. And so, a lot of the things we're saying up here and what y'all are saying are covered in here. Now it's not granular. So with regard to the pump station, it doesn't have that on the map. And, being that the county, I think some of the frustration with the Sewer South situation taking so long was, well, we can't apply for an RA grant till this thing's done, so we can't even go apply for RA funding or EDA funding until this project is closed out, this phase of this project is closed out. So that's why we're constantly saying, hurry, 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 Chris, get the sewer in the ground. And that's great news today that it is coming. But that's the frustration for us, is we see this opportunity, or I see opportunities where people are saying, hey, here, let me hand you $500 million and invest and provide housing both for students as well as retirees and everybody in between. We can't, on our own, I don't think, fund all sewer in the unincorporated areas. I mean, I think we need the partnerships with the state, with the feds to do that, and why it's so urgent that I'm very glad to hear Sewer South is moving forward. And we appreciate y'all partnering with us on that project, because I think it's gonna pay dividends. It'll certainly pay dividends to the county. I hope it pays dividends indirectly, to everyone, but to your point, Mayor, the people within the cities, they pay county taxes too. So, we have to serve both the city residents as well as just those that live in the unincorporated areas. And that's the struggle we deal with. I know y'all, in large part, are just serving your municipal, your city residents, but also you serve your industrial or, non-city residents that are customers of yours through your utilities. But, I would love to see, if the county can work with the sewer authority on upgrading sewer in the areas that we've got projects on the line, I'd love to see it.
Well, I think that's what we're asking. That's the big thing, and what you just said was key to that. Those are county taxpayers, the city of Seneca is gonna sell them some water, they're not gonna sell them firewood, they're not gonna make money off sewer. So, we're just asking if the county wants to invest in this, if they wanna help. Because there's a lot of growth coming, and we just need to make sure we're doing it the right way that's gonna benefit the county as a whole.
And if I could add something, I think I've heard, kind of outside looking in here, sitting and listening to the whole thing, I've heard, we've got a plan on paper, but I've heard people talk up here, and it doesn't align with what our plan is. So we're in the same boat, right? Scott, the mayor, we're all sitting here, we've had some cordial conversations and some uncordial conversations in the OJSRA. Just to be honest, we battle back and forth. My big thing is always be growth pays for growth. I know Scott's probably tired of hearing this, other people are too, but that's how I feel. And I think until we all align, this council with this council, we're missing a great opportunity to take advantage of that. I was in the meeting, we moved things up on our OJSR hit list to move up, to take advantage of that, those millions of dollars that possibly are coming our way from a person wanting to invest in this. But if we have a plan there, how we're gonna build things, for us and for Chris, I'm pretty sure we don't build sewer lines for industrial, it's gonna be built for housing. It's the 300 gallons, the 200 gallons, whatever it is. I think that's where we're gonna get down a little more in the weeds, we'll call it, and align on how we're gonna do this, because then we go after investment. I know people talk to the council up here, county, about, hey, we wanna build this here. We wanna build that here. But if we had alignment where our plan is to build houses right here, which would align with your building over here for industrial or whatever, I think that really helps support this group and you guys as a county council to go after the right places. But we've kind of said the same thing here, 3 different ways, I think, that we need support of what you want. I'll look at the plan that you have, because I'm curious, but to differentiate, I'm assuming it does, industrial, commercial,
It does.
residential. But do we all line up here on that? I know you voted for it, but I heard, I want to stay farmland. We got old farmland that we don't use. I know you want Clemson, I see the smile on your face, and I've heard that you want to go out and get on the I-85 corridor. Just to be honest, from what I've seen of our group here, it's impossible. We can't, we don't have the money, the funding, or the agreement to get all those at once, right? So I think if we align your top 5, we go with our top 5, maybe in Seneca Creek we get the money from that guy, we bump that up, we get it done. But maybe we're going up 11, Walhalla, or the industrial park is, maybe that's where our pinch point is. We want industrial, and we gotta fix that first. I don't know what it is, but I think from listening to all the conversations, my opinion is, that we're talking, and that's the first step, and I agree, I've heard that several times when you get there. But I would like to go, I don't know where we're going next, but the next step would be is industrial more important than housing? Because without the industrial, you don't need the housing. But or as a county already seeing we need more housing to supply the industrial we have. I don't know if we even know that answer here. And I think we have to have that to all align. So that's kind of my comments.
Don't they sort of go together?
They do. But are we going 85 south first, or are we going, is this council supporting going up 11 because we have more coming? I don't know the answer to that. I'm just throwing these out here. I know there's houses coming to Westminster, a lot of them. They keep talking to us about that. Walhalla, I know lots going there. So, and we want the commercial out there. Is someone gonna live in Walhalla and drive all the way out to 85? Or are we gonna put houses between the backside of Seneca and Westminster out that way to serve those businesses that are going in on the industrial area out there. I mean, we don't know the answer to that. I don't think any of us do. It's been said before. But I think until we get both of us aligned on where we're going with it, we've been talking a lot, but I don't know that we're there. I mean, we're not even close, because I don't think that we really know. And we're never gonna know, I think, is said several times. But I think you guys have a really good idea of who's probably been pinging you, I wanna build here, I wanna build there. I know Seneca knows who wants to build there, I know what, but I don't think even us across here really talk about what's being built in Seneca. Because it's Seneca's, they manage that. And I don't know if Seneca knows what's being built on our side, because that's Westminster's. And I think we gotta align better on that too, to support you guys as well. We talk about putting this or updating Seneca Creek, but I don't know if I told Scott, hey, there's 1,000 homes going in right here. Really? Well, shoot, I didn't know that. How's it gonna affect you? You know, and Scott goes, well, I got all this stuff over there, apartment complex. How's it gonna? We don't have those conversations. We're not even aligned enough on that ourselves. A lot sometimes to support what you need either. So it's on both sides, right? But I think that's.
And how many people are telling Chris? Because ultimately, Conross is
Yeah.
going to be your limiting factor there in terms of what you can accept, so.
Don't we think at some point it would be good to have Pioneer in the room? Because the only thing flowing through a sewer pipe is water. And all of you are water providers, and I think Pioneer's the only other in the county. So I know each one of you cities came and received ARPA money, but for us to see where the water expansion is going, it may help to see where the sewer expansion would need to follow. There's nothing in the sewer line besides water, and Oconee County can obviously we're hearing, and I'm not speaking on y'all's behalf, but I think at some point it might be good for us to have Pioneer in the room. So if we know we're doing upgrading the water line here, there's a very likely occurrence that an upgrade in the sewer line would be necessary, because increased water would mean increased wastewater, right? Am I wrong? All the cities have an increased water project going on now. Are those not indicators of where that growth may be coming? Am I off base?
Depends on what kind of project it is, I guess. If you're
I mean, every city sitting here has a water infrastructure project going on, or a water expansion project going on, correct? Aren't those driven by growth, or is that just driven by replacement?
I would say both for us.
Okay,
I mean,
I'm just
Mostly,
confused.
mostly ours is
Because
replacement.
we don't own or
Ours
operate
is a
water.
replacement of a line that serves the county territory. It's up 28.
But is it an upgrade or just a like-for-like replacement?
No, it'll be a replacement, but an upgrading capacity as well.
Right. So that may mean there would be a need for sewer upgrade in that same
And
area.
that's in that same triangle that you guys were talking
Correct.
about, right up Highway 28.
You see where I'm going though?
Yes,
I mean, an increase in water capacity would essentially mean a very likely need for an increase in sewer capacity.
Or the capability to get more capacity.
Right.
But you have some areas like the east part of the county where the water capacity is plentiful. I mean, we don't have any
Right.
concern there, but it's the sewer.
Now, those seem to be
that's the
evident.
bottleneck.
It's the ones that may not be as evident, that we could use all of the little clues along the way to help us come up with a better plan.
Well, what can the county do to help us with this? I mean, what do you think the county can do?
Well, if you're asking for prioritize, I think is what Lee's saying. So, I mean, obviously, strategic plan has prioritized sewer south as the number one thing. So we're clear on that. And I don't think it's for massive housing developments down 85. I don't think anybody's gonna build a house on 85. It's gonna be manufactured. So from a priority standpoint, that's been number one for 6 years now, and obviously it's getting accomplished. So when I look at the other option, talk about Seneca Creek is one. If you, and I know Chris would speak to this as well, is probably the number one place that we get pulled permits. So I'm not against growth in that specific area, because I know it's coming anyway. And the factor of it is how we design and control that area. The Seneca Creek pump station needs to be upgraded at some point anyway. So if it was upgraded properly, with the help of development, same way like on Sheep Farm Road, that was a combo project, and City of Seneca's doing some things on that pump station as well through there to assist with that area. So that's definitely, obviously, Seneca Creek is a priority. That growth in that Sheep Farm Road area seems to be a priority. The pump station and the sewer already exist out on OITP in that Westminster area. So, when I'm thinking through that, that's kind of why I come up with those areas. So if you're told, does that kind of help if I prioritize things, that's what I look at. If you're gonna look at spending, obviously there would be grants and things involved and developer money as well, but Seneca Creek Pump Station upgrade in that area is the easiest way to get your money back. Sewer South, 30, 40 years before, you think about just getting the sewer down to the Golden Corner, okay? It's been, there for three years now, 2 years, 3 years?
7 or 8.
Completed? Been that long? Have I been on here that long?
I think it's 2016.
Well, I don't have you here. So, it's been on there a long time. So the speculative sewer is not necessarily the most conservative form of government. Just being honest, for all this conservative talk that we have here. So, when we start talking about running, sewer out to 85, that's not a conservative, but it's a good way to have growth in a specific area, manufacturing, things like that, to actually help keep your county, because counties that are not growing are dying. So I think that's the things that we see on a population standpoint. So when I prioritize things, that's what I look at is, where are we at on the workforce? Where are we at on those, do I want to land 1,000 workforce job? I don't think that's what Oconee County's good at. We're great at these 250, 450, and 550 jobs, but if somebody came in with wanting 2,000 jobs, what do you think's going to happen? It's going to be Rock Hill tomorrow. So to me, I think we're doing a phenomenal job at what we're recruiting, the kind we're recruiting, and making sure the municipalities can support it as well, because that's where we're eating. So if that's in a way for me to kind of leave here today with the priorities that I have, that's kind of my thought. But I feel like the massive amount of growth is going to occur between Seneca and Westminster. To me, that's the most inviting area to live in, but that's growth of housing. I don't think manufacturing is going to come booming down through there, and I don't really, if you want my opinion, think that that's what that municipality wants, because the manufacturing is there. It can take it. Those lines, from my understanding, the capacity is there all day long. If one of the OITP people came and said, "Hey, I want to put this right there next to Walmart," they could, but it's like they choose not to because of what they're getting in those industrial parks, and they like being in the industrial parks because it's a little bit more protected, and they don't have to worry about their trucks coming in and out. So, if that kind of guides you where I'm going, I don't think we should run sewer lines to Long Creek. I don't think anybody in Long Creek thinks that we should run sewer lines to Long Creek. I don't want sewer lines running down, 24. I don't think most people in Oakwood want sewer lines running down 24. I haven't had anybody ringing on my doorbell telling me that. So everybody's like, protect the farms, and keep us down, keep the lights down, keep those things. And so we get those commercial developments coming in there. That's why I brought up the whole thing with lighting. Downward lighting is important to me because it protects, to me, light pollution. And people laugh about it till you go by and you see something lit up like a football field. Your municipalities light up, you can walk 24/7. That's what people in municipalities want. Out there where I'm at, they don't want that. But I think there's an equal amount of people that want to live inside a municipality, right on the outside, and these outskirts. So to me, that's what we need to focus on is, if we're talking about, hey, this is where we want manufacturing, I don't have a problem pinpointing that. Seneca Rail Site, OITP, Golden Corner, 85, those areas, and then some of the other ones that are coming back online now. I don't have a problem saying that, but I don't think right outside of the city limits of Westminster they want us recruiting some massive industrial development to smack dab in the middle of it. Could be wrong, but that's what, I don't see that being inviting to those cities.
Well, as we,
Go ahead, sir.
as we move forward off of this, well, I think everybody's got the gist of where we're at. What can we do that will help y'all in this decision making? And Chris, particularly, what can the county do? If you've got a replacement to go in and we've got an opportunity to increase capacity, do you wanna get in touch with the county and let them discuss it, get back with us and decide if they wanna see the growth in that area? Is that fair? Would that work?
Are these already prioritized by the authority as well?
Yes, I mean, it would come before we decide what we're gonna do. Yeah, I think.
I mean, there's already a priority by the authority? Do y'all have a version of a strategic plan or comp plan, I guess is my question?
I think our priority is based off of condition and need for replacement based off of age and function.
Right, so there's already a
Not necessarily
list.
a priority for growth, right? So
Gotcha.
I think our priority is, okay, we better hurry up and replace this station before it falls in a hole. And then the question we have is, when we identify that priority based on mechanical need, is do we provide for an expansion of that while we're doing it?
I've seen that in
So,
your minutes.
yeah, I mean, that's.
So does
that's-
that list exist now, or
It does.
it does? Can we have a copy of that?
Sure.
Can I make a suggestion maybe for next steps? Not that we have to wrap it up at it, but like, so what I'm hearing is you guys have priorities, and like you said, it's based on condition more than expansion. And some of that overlaps, if you're talking about Seneca Creek, and things like that. And you guys have identified where you see growth going, maybe not at that granular level that you'll need, but, at least enough to help kind of merge the two to create the conversation on a larger list between, so you guys can prioritize what upgrades you need to make in terms of condition, make sure you can keep operating what you have, and then incorporate, where growth could go and what the timing is and figure that out with that larger list. And I think to do that, at least the first step is maybe to begin to sit down, I don't know if it's staffs or a subcommittee or group or whatever, but sit down and look at those things and say, okay, what are these lists and how do they fit together, and begin to look at it. Because when you're talking about sewer, it's one thing to say on that future land use map, this is where we see this going and this going, that going. When you start talking about sewer, you're looking at those basins, you're looking at how that fits, what's reasonable, what's feasible and stuff. And that's a conversation that needs to be had. That's not as easy as just kind of overlaying those two maps. Okay, this works, because water has its own thing, physics. So, from that standpoint, maybe the next step is to kind of put staffs together or some other subgroup of this to begin to have that conversation and look at those lists, like you said. So instead of each of you looking at the lists in your own vacuum, you have that conversation together, and maybe that spurs more discussion. Yes.
I got this for Scott and Chris. I was in a meeting, I guess, way time flies, a couple of years ago, and y'all were talking about having problems at 123 in the belt line, that you had a manhole, was at its full capacity at that time? Has that problem been solved?
It was at 123.
In Wells Highway,
Wells
so not
Highway.
Seneca.
Wells Highway.
No, that's part of the whole Seneca Creek issue that we're discussing
Okay.
now. That pump station would encompass that line that has the manhole where we have the overflow as well. So, well, I guess I've got the floor. I'll go ahead and address a couple things here. So, the capital improvement plan that the board adopted, I believe it was back in November or December of last year, that was put in place, and it was primarily driven by reactive measures, things that we needed to make improvements on, either due to we had a list that we created internally that looked at safety first, if it was an imminent safety issue, then if it was an environmental compliance issue, and then you kind of go on down the line with, one of the last things on there from my standpoint was looking at growth. Is it strictly a project that's associated with growth? Well, if it's that, with all the other issues that we had that we needed to put money toward, if it was just growth, it fell down the list, because that's something we can control internally. Again, that goes back to the wastewater is our end. So that was back at the end of last calendar year. Well, then we just had all of the matters that Mayor Ramey mentioned with the consent order that we have since found, and there is some overlap between the two, and then, but there's other areas where it's added to what we already have identified previously. So, and I know that it's been mentioned about Sheep Farm Road and Bounty Land. One of the areas that I have concerns with, and this is a small part of compliance, but it's a larger part due to the growth that we have, is we've got an 8-inch line that goes across the railroad bridge at 123, just west of Sealed Air. And all of the flow that's gonna make it to the treatment plant from Sheep Farm Road, Bounty Land, the Thornwell property, Walmart, all of that goes across that railroad bridge. An 8-inch line that is fairly, you've driven across a bridge, so you know it's fairly flat, you're gonna have very limited capacity. 8-inch, just to give you an idea, 8-inch is the smallest diameter gravity sewer line that DHEC will even let you put in for public use. So, even things like that will need to be considered, because again, that's not a high priority for me. That's something I can control because I've got to address a lot of these other compliance related matters. But that doesn't help what you guys are going to, that are using us as a means to an end for what you all are trying to do with what your constituents want in the county. So again, as I've said numerous times, we're a service agency. We're not here to drive where sewer needs to go. We're not here to create an empire. We're here to support the county and to support the cities and what they want their communities to be, what you guys want your communities to be. And that's where we're trying to find our way, us, the staff, and the board, to try to find the way to support the cities and the counties the best way we can. And it's just difficult for us to do it, and it's not just the counties, the same thing applies with the cities, but there's a lot of existing infrastructure already in place. So what Mr. Kane mentioned earlier with infill, I'm 100% for infill. It makes it a lot easier for us than to go and extend a line. So that's what we need. That's what I need, is to know if we do serve growth, what is it going to be? Because you heard how my feeling is with it, is if it's strictly a growth related project, with everything else we've got going on, tens of millions of dollars just to come into compliance with these consent orders, a strictly growth driven project is going to be lower on my list unless there is somebody else that's willing to fund it. And again, and Mr. Mulder mentioned this earlier as well, if somebody comes and gives us $4 million to put in a pump station or upsize a line, we're there, we're a service provider. We're not there to dictate to them what they want to do with their property or project, and whether that happens or not. If they've got the funds and the means, we'll do it. It's not our job to tell them no in those cases. So that's the position from my seat and my perspective with the whole matter. So I believe that addresses.
I think so, and the way we work at the sewer authority is the operations planning committee or the finance committee will meet, and they'll come up with a project, they'll discuss the project, and then it gets a motion and comes to the full board. Would the county council be willing, if we run across one of these issues, let's just say the O&P committee is gonna bring something to the board, let Chris contact Amanda get in touch with y'all and get y'all's opinion on this when we do meet with the board. That way we know what you want. If you know it's gonna be something big, I know I'm putting you on the spot, but we need.
You're not putting me on the spot. I'm just wondering how the county attorney is feeling about the polling.
And I know.
Just wondering how the county attorney is feeling about that.
We're
But
prioritizing.
before this council, and I'm gonna have to speak on their behalf because it's my job, before they can make a decision to move backwards, forward, sideways, or anywhere, we have to have that rate study completed. We've had a sewer in the ground operable for 6 years. We have no idea what our rates are yet. It's very hard to drive an economic development interest without a rate study. We don't have, go ahead, Chris, is it
That's
coming
what,
soon?
for me, that's the biggest part of this whole sewer basin planning study that's being done that way.
Right.
Because Oconee County is on the hook to supplement whatever that system, wherever the
Right,
shortfall
but we've
is, or
been
the revenue
paying it
that's
for 6
generated.
years. So every
So-
time we had an interested party, it would be, okay, we have to know how many gallons, how many this, how many that. So, I mean, as much questions as you have, just for their information, they have just as many going backward.
Mhm.
But this is the very first and best step that has been made, and I hope everybody agrees, this first and best step between the authority and the county. But
I
yeah,
agree. And that's what we want to know.
there's just a
What's
lot
gonna
of
work
things
for
that
you?
need to happen.
Yeah, y'all meet every 2 weeks, so normally, if we've got something, we can get it to y'all can get back to us before our board meeting. We know what y'all are thinking, we know which direction y'all want us to go, we know if y'all are willing to advance in it or if you're not. It'll make it easier on us, and then the back and forth between you and Chris is key to all this. Y'all just stay in touch, and I know y'all talk a lot now.
We do, we do.
I think.
And I feel like
we've been-
that has improved
Yeah.
all of this as well.
Well, I appreciate
just
you
for the
going to your
boards.
board, because that makes it easier
Info.
on us. And,
And you know, the county did fund the basin study that's
Right.
going on now and the change order to that basin study, and they're consistently fund. I mean, more in excess of $700,000 on top of the commitment for the expansion of Sewer South. So it's not that there hasn't been any funding priorities. They're there. They're just may
no,
not be
it's just-
verbal.
we
They're
see the
monetary.
issues with Sewer South, and what we're trying to do is just what you read in the paper last week. You got all these new housing developments coming in.
I don't read
If we
the
don't
paper.
get proactive and start trying to figure out a system before that hits,
Right.
we're gonna be in the same boat on every little project that pops up, so we're just trying to head that off.
It'd be helpful to have that rate study completed.
All of those need to continue. All
Report.
of these bits and pieces need to continue. The big thing is the master plan. We've got to have an Oconee County master plan.
We have a
Well, I
comp
think that-
plan.
We've
Yeah.
got to have it by July 23.
I can give it to you today before you leave.
Are you speaking of like a wastewater master plan
I'm
or?
talking about growth, that includes wastewater.
Well, and I mean, from the county standpoint, I will say this, from a planning standpoint, when you do a comp plan and you do a future land use map, that is gonna show you the type of developments you want on a fairly high level, not a granular level, and from that standpoint, and I think that's where I'm saying the next steps are maybe get, whether it's staff or, some subcommittee, your OP committee and some subcommittee of council, whatever that be, maybe some group together that looks at you guys' information, which is a much more granular level, and their information in terms of identifying general areas, begin to overlay those and get that discussion going of, okay, on a finer scale, what would a master plan for sewer expansion be to serve these different areas? What's feasible, I don't know if costs are involved, but ultimately, when you're prioritizing things, you're gonna need to know costs, because something might be your top priority, but if it's $30 million, it's not your top priority at a certain point, And so that's where I'm saying next steps might be to get that discussion going on a tighter level. Because the county's not gonna be able to give you a plan for this is where we need sewer and how it's gonna have to look, and you guys just go implement it, because it wouldn't make any sense, because they're not sewer people. You guys aren't gonna be able to say, hey, this is where development should go, and tell the county where development should go, because that's not really y'all's job either. So, but the two of you combined can make those decisions in a coordinated discussion.
But one of those are gonna be first. You gotta pick one, say, okay, we're gonna start here. Well, maybe that don't work, we'll do.
Well, I think you both have part of the answer. You just need to put those documents together to come up with that solution of what that prioritization is gonna be. And so from that standpoint, I hope this was a good first meeting for you guys, and a beginning of a conversation that y'all have long-term and be able to do that. I need Scott and Amanda to stop laughing at each other.
Mr. Hart,
Yes, sir.
we don't need to be tiptoeing around, do we need to partnership with Anderson or anybody else? We don't need to tiptoe around that. We need to get out and talk about it. has anybody looked at a topographical map of Anderson and the lower side of Oconee County? I know you have, I know Chris has. Where would be the best plant? In Oconee County. So, why we gonna tipple around about it? Let's say, yeah, that's gonna do it. That'd be good, let's plan that.
I believe there'll be some information coming out about that in the next 6 weeks or so when we have the, hopefully, final rough draft or approaching the final draft of that study. I think we'll have some information by middle to the end of October on that matter. And,
We've planned master plans. I've been through 2 of them already with the county. We plan to do halfway branch. Council changed, scrapped that one. We're gonna do, lower Oconee. We did that for 4 years, scrapped it. We need a live master plan.
Well, and I think, again, I think this is the beginning of the discussion that gets you to being on the same page long-term, that if you have that discussion together and kind of do that, even as changes take place, it makes it easier for that transition to stick with those priorities, because they're thought out, they're reasoned, and everybody understands why you made those decisions. It doesn't mean things won't change, because the reality is, as a planner, I'll tell you, we're just always bitter because things change. And we put something on paper, and then, 6 months later, something happens, you're like, what, I use Spartanburg County as my current example. Nobody picked Dorman going down to 221 and 26 in Spartanburg. It was going to be right there where the Home Depot is now. But that has changed over the last 15 years. It's changed a complete dynamic of growth in Spartanburg County, whereas all of a sudden Woodruff is the hot spot in Spartanburg County, and before it was an afterthought backwater. And that had nothing to do with anybody's plan or anybody saying anything. The school district figured out, somebody offered me stupid money to sell my current site, and we bought this out here and built a small college campus, honestly, for Dorman High School, and now everything's moved out there, and then a bunch of industry followed. Those kind of things happen. But, so, that's always going to be the case, no matter what you put on paper. If you can create the structure where the conversation's happening on a regular basis, and everybody's on that same page and can work through it together, it makes it a lot easier to deal with those changes, so they're not so abrupt.
Live plan.
Yeah.
Is there anything else y'all like from us?
So I think this has been a good meeting. I think, it's like everything else, communication is the most important thing. We might need to have more meetings. More would be better than none. I don't have much sewer in District 1. I've got some, but very little. I think we've all learned something here. I know I have. And I think we've just got to communicate. Here again, I think planning's important. It's hard. With a lot of Oconee County being control-free, like we talked about, the developer come in wherever he wants to, wherever he thinks he's gonna make the money. We don't necessarily have any say-so over that, because it is control-free, but we can definitely work together and for the betterment of Oconee County. So I appreciate whoever's idea this was that we get together, and appreciate that. And with that, is there a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank y'all.